I'm Dave Mahovich from the nursing department, and we are thrilled that this forum presentation, Primetime, is happening today because as a department, nursing has benefited phenomenally through many partnerships, and especially partnerships, community partnerships in the Frogtown Summit University area. Primetime is designed to celebrate the experiences and accomplishments of Bethel faculty, students, and staff. It's a collaborative project between the Friends of the Bethel University Library, faculty development, and other offices on campus. We record most of our programming, and you can find recordings at the BU Digital Library. On Tuesday, October 25th, join us when Professor Adam Johnson and visiting artist Chris Baker discuss memory and artificial intelligence and our understanding of ourselves. But today, Tanden Brekke, Assistant Director of Community Engagement and Service Learning, seniors Jolene, Rotich, and Kiersti, Phenow, and Dr. Harley Schrek, Professor of Anthropology, and Melvin, Giles, and Megan Phinney from the Urban Family and Garden Alliance will share their community-university partnership and how it's benefited all those involved. Tanden?
Well, to kind of get us started this morning, I got a quote here from a book called The Unheard Voices, Community, Organizations, and Service Learning. And in this book, the authors, Stoker and Tryon, they write, our universities and colleges are indeed reaching out, but are not yet fully inviting people in. And they go on to talk about the difference between reaching out and inviting in. And for them, reaching out, what they saw in their research was that universities created these partnerships that had an unequal balance of power. And the power resided mostly with the universities. And what they're challenging us to do in this book is to think about partnerships that are mutually beneficial, where power is shared between both the community and the university. Back in 1989, when the Bethel Frogtown Summit University partnership was established, there was a deep sense that if Bethel just reached out, this would be an unequal partnership. So instead, an invitation went out to community organizations, community members, and an invitation went out to Bethel University to respond to this invitation in. An invitation in creating a long-standing, intentional partnership based on trust, accountability, and reciprocity. Here's how the partnership was talked about in a document that I found a few days ago, dated 1999. It said they described the partnership as a college community partnership where each entity carries the dual title of teacher and student. So 18 years later, this partnership is growing and it's strong in many different ways. Yeah, I think we're still working with what does this invitation in really look like in very practical ways. So today's presentation is to help us get a little glimpse of that. What is this invitation where power is shared both between the university and the community? What does that look like? So we'll have some student perspectives, some community member perspectives, and then also faculty and sharing about this rich engagement. I'm going to be a timekeeper, so I'm going to keep things tight with our speakers this morning. And the reason we want to do that is at the end, we're going to have some time for Q&A and some dialogue. So if you have some questions, please be ready to ask those towards the end of our presentation this morning. So to begin with, we have Jolene and Kiersti that will start this morning.
So my name is Kiersti, otherwise known in the community as KP. And I spent this summer having the profound privilege to work in Rondo and Frogtown. My role specifically was about 20 hours a week working with the Urban Farm and Garden Alliance, as well as just the way that trickled into different partnerships. So with that, I was spending most of my time at about just more than 5 gardens, but in the Urban Farm and Garden Alliance, but I spent most of my time at 5 different community gardens, and each one kind of playing a specific and different role. But this was, I could take the whole hour to talk about how this summer profoundly impacted me, and those of you that know me have probably already heard me talk to you about it. But this was probably one of the most powerful, meaningful, and healing summers that I've ever experienced, and much of that is due to the partnership that Bethel has created with Frogtown and Rondo, and some of the ways that in which that happened for me was just being blown away by the way that individuals welcomed me into that space. Bethel, like Tanden said, has a long history and a long partnership, but often there's quick turnover in students and time with service learning, and just knowing that I was unknown to most of the community, but still that extension of welcome and of grace and of mutual shared learning experience that happened. And one of kind of the ways that I experienced that mutual partnership was in just the experience of like what it means to work in collaboration and in community. Melvin and Megan are some of the most incredible leaders in what it looks like to break down hierarchical or even just power imbalances that really welcome and invite the strengths and the gifts of all individuals into whatever it is that they're working towards. And that allowed me to just kind of shed my veil of ignorance in terms of how we talk about community wealth and what how we even define what a wealth, the wealth that a community has. And often we speak very much in monetary and kind of asset-based or just even like institutional structures or power, and we base and define communities based off of that. And I was profoundly impacted by just the depth of wealth that this community has, that Rondo has, just the neighbors, the stories, the gardening knowledge that I had nothing, I had no understanding of prior to that. And just like one short story, I was at the Victoria Garden, which was a community garden, and through an interaction that Melvin had introduced me to one of the neighbors, Mr. Brekke, who's lived there for years and years and years, he let me use his water to water my plants. And what that relationship created was, it started as me just kind of being awkward and uncomfortable with the fact that I'm walking into someone's yard to grab their hose, but Mr. Brekke sat outside every day in his lawn chair in the driveway, and we just bonded and had this really profound and beautiful friendship that came out of that, and that turned into sitting and just listening to his stories of the way that 94 impacted that community, the way that he has continuously been a consistent face and voice in the community, and just reminded me the ways that we look so much from the outside of what we think exists. But when you kind of create these unique opportunities like Bethel did, and create the space to welcome in a platform to create relationship and to share knowledge and to share wealth, it can really transform the way you see yourself operating in the world, and then the way that you invite others into kind of transforming you. So.
All right, so my name is Jolene Rotich, and I also had the pleasure of working in the Rondo Frogtown Summit University neighborhood. And my role, I worked 10 hours in the Frogtown Summit University office, and then 10 hours with Central Baptist, which was a neighboring church there that worked with youth in the neighborhood. And so I think some things that I took out of my experience, one was in what it looks like to build community and work together. And I think one of the things that I took out of that is that, one, that it is a relationship, and you are able to build a symbiotic relationship with individuals, and then seeing that not only is Bethel bringing things, but also the community is bringing so many things to Bethel as well. For me, out of my experience working with Central Baptist, just watching how people led the different community organizations and different initiatives that were happening at Central Baptist just really encouraged me. So during the summer, I was able to work with one of the youth groups. So they had like Wednesday night Bible study, and then they also had activities during the summer as well. so going to Valley Fair, and one we went to Madison as well. But seeing how relationship really took place. And so Central Baptist has been present in the neighborhood for about 100 years almost. And so seeing how it met the needs of the community was really encouraging. So even though there were changes in demography and different needs, they were receptive to that, and they were willing to lean into those changes as well. And so one example of this is that some of the students within the youth group kind of moved out further, but the leaders at Central Baptist, they were willing to still continue that relationship with the young people, and they would go far and above and beyond and like go pick them up when they were like a lot further away from the community. So just seeing how people modeled working in community was a highlight for me. And then another thing was just practicing presence. So I think there's sometimes this notion that if you go into a neighborhood that you're going there to help, quote unquote, but there's so much that you can take from just being present. Just one of the goals that I had this summer was how I could just use my skills in whatever ways that seemed fit at the time. And so I think Melvin did a good job of just like tapping into the potential of like the student workers that were there. So sometimes we had like flyers, and so I got a chance to use my small like graphic design skills to help in that. So that was a way of modeling just being present to the needs of the community and reaching out where you can. And then another thing is that even though there were different goals that we were to achieve and different the goals that we were to meet, I think what was important and what I took out of that was that it's about the process it takes to get to that goal. And so even if you don't necessarily meet all of the goals that you set out, I think the process of building relationship and knowing that you worked together in community to get to that goal was, I think, what was important. And then the second thing that I took out of that, so not just like community building, but also how policy impacts communities. So part of my work at Central Baptist was looking at how there was a stadium that was to be built close to Central Baptist. And so I was looking at different ways that would impact the church. And so just seeing how different policies impacts communities was a way that just helped me to see further like different paths that I'd want to take for my future, and how small or such initiatives in a community that come in can have an impact on how people serve. And so just being aware of how those policies do impact communities was something that I saw during my time. And so during my summer, this just gave me a way of seeing what it looks like to model working together in community, and also that there's so much that this community has to offer to Bethel. And so it's not just Bethel giving, but we are also taking so much from the rich relationships that we've built there. And so I'm very thankful for having that experience working in the summer.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's great to be here, and of course, I want to greet you with peace bubbles. I like bubbles instead of bullets. And I believe President Jay endorses peace bubbles. My name is Melvin.
My name is Megan.
It's kind of hard to follow Jolene and KP. I would like to hear more. It just gives me great pleasure of listening to them. Gives me good pleasure of seeing Stephanie, who also worked in the community this year. I'm not sure if Mary is around, but she was another student who, Bethel has some fantastic students this year. And I would say for the first time in at least 3 or 4 years, all the students made our honor roll, our Hall of Fame. So give those students a hand, please. I have had the distinct pleasure, along with Mr. Schrek, Professor Dr. Harley, to be part of the partnership from its conception. And when I think of that time, I think of some of the students are 18 and 19 years old. And that the students and the staff continue to nourish the partnership. I would say it's one of the longest partnerships in Frogtown and Rondo, particularly with an educational institution. Most colleges like to come into a neighborhood and maybe do a project for a year. If we're lucky, it might be 2 years. Bethel over the years have continued to stay in the fire, have continued to be fantastic ambassadors, shining their light. And this year, the students and some professors was down in Frogtown just the other day, Friday, we had a groundbreaking. And there were some Bethel folks just shining their light. Both KP and Jolene mentioned one word that I really love. It's about being present. And all the students, part of orientation, is just to hang out, to learn how to be present. And Stephanie, you all did a great job of letting your light shine, not trying to do or fix, but listening. They was able to follow the 4 agreements perfectly. Number 1, being just, if you be truthful with your word. If you have nothing to say, you know, you got the 2 ears, listen more. Number 2, don't take things personal. And when you go into a new environment, man, it's kind of hard not to take certain things personal, especially when your background is completely different. The third thing, which I think is the hardest, is not to make assumptions. And one way of not doing that is asking questions. And I'm really happy that students was able to work alongside people who they could trust and could ask questions. And the fourth one, of course, is just to do your best, knowing your best is going to change. And unbelievable, their best was constant. And they each had different assignments, and it just really, particularly with our gardening, we had a great harvest, and we continue to look for a good harvest. People in the community are beginning to know about Bethel Partnership. Even just walking in here today, I had a phone call, and there was a request of Bethel students for a new garden. And I told the person on the phone, I said, well, you know, right now, I don't think so. Maybe next spring, summer. He said, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Can we get some more Bethel students? So I know I was on campus a couple weeks ago because of I want to call it a fantastic ceremony. It was so fun to see, again, Jay Barnes with a spray can, you know, graffiti, doing some healing. And that's one reason I stay part of this partnership, because I like what's happening. Change doesn't happen overnight. It takes a while. And for me, I'm always happy to blow bubbles, to be a cheerleader, but to promote Bethel. And to the students, I just want to say, you guys are terrific, terrific.
Did you say that now? I guess what I can add to what Melvin has said is that in a practical sense, the students were awesome. All the activities that you saw up there, those are all voluntarily organized and put together, and we can't do it without extra hands. And the students did that with really open hearts, and just whatever they could do, they did. Whatever we asked them to do, they did. And I think what I would just add is that as a white person working in that community, I don't live in the community, but seeing the students sort of renewed this sense in me that I'm so gifted to be able to work there. In our white culture, we learn how to be an individualist, and we learn how to be task-oriented, and we learn how to be good capitalists. And when you're in the community, it's so much more communal. I mean, these people share everything, and they organize for each other, because otherwise they'd be, I don't know, they just need to stick together for power. And for me, when I started there, it was just such a freeing feeling to be able to have passion about something and to do it voluntarily, and to just be who I am with people and not worry about what kind of money I'm making or anything. It's just being more of who I am, letting my light shine, like Melvin said. So I really saw that in the students, and it just renewed my whole outlook. So I'll leave you with that. I think the community has really a lot of richness to offer all of you.
I just want to give a shout out to all my the staff folks here who I know, even one of my neighbors back there, hey Gene.
It's good to hear the stories, and the students, and Melvin and Megan. There's a lot more they can tell. You know, I'm only going to take about a minute here because that's all I have to say. You know, I've been, this is my 29th year at Bethel, and I'm as an anthropologist teaching, and I've spent over 28 years talking about other people, you know, and whether it's Oceania or other parts of the world and things like that. And I'm truly convinced that the best way to teach is, I should never be on campus. That the best way to teach is in the community, and or overseas in Amsterdam or India or Ecuador or someplace like that. Because instead of talking about people, you learn a lot more by being with people. And to be with people, first of all, it has to be an invitation. You know, we can impose ourselves because we have power. And, you know, as has been said, but without an invitation, you should just not be there. The invitation is essential. And so we've had really gracious invitations over the years in Frogtown and other places. I think about some contrasts about successful community partnerships and successful classes. And I have four dimensions. And every one of those I've done it wrong, and sometimes I've done it right. And Melvin's watched that process. First of all, the very idea of a class in the community, the very idea of a class that you're partnering. Generally, if it's my idea or Bethel's idea, it's a bad idea. Okay, if it's the community's idea, it's a much better idea, and it's really a good idea if the idea comes together between us. And that requires a lot of die-in to power, if you're from Bethel, because it's really easy for us to defend our syllabus. You know, we actually write syllabus for all our classes, and the syllabus we think is a word from God, but it's really not. It should be written in pencil. And so you heard that phrase before, Melvin, right? And as soon as you get into the community, get ready to erase and cross out. So the ideas. Another dimension are the questions that you pursue, the questions that you ask. Those, in qualitative methods, I always say the best question is one you discover, not the one you bring into your research project. It's the same thing in communities. The best questions are the ones that are discovered between you and the community. And sometimes they can be totally, utterly different. If you go with those questions, you're usually much more successful. Another dimension is time. You know, we have, speaking of time, Tanden, we have a syllabi, and we have calendars, and we have semesters and all that. For example, in May sometime we're supposed to stop teaching, right? And most faculty members kind of enjoy that. But communities don't have semesters, and they don't have the same kind of time that dimensions that we have, either in terms of a semester or in terms of the daily cycle. And as students in classes that I've led overseas or here, I get tired of hearing is the community always comes first. And if it means that you need to get back for supper and there's something really important going on in the community, you probably should stay there and figure out another way to eat supper. Because the community operates at a very different time scale. And in terms of the semester, it should mean that our job is not over once the semester is done. The students probably aren't involved anymore, but the faculty need to be there, available, and in a relationship. And that's gracious. Let's see. I have something here too, but I can't read it. It's probably really important. Oh, ownership. Ownership. It looked like kinship to me. Ownership. Who owns a project? Well, our syllabus says that we do, but we don't. If it's successful, it's a shared ownership with the majority of the share going to the community. That's why the Frogtown Partnership started. We first had an idea, Bethel, I'll take 1 second. Bethel had an idea that we should do something there because we thought there was a lot of money, a big grant. It turned out the grant really didn't materialize, but we started a conversation with the community. And I remember the first meeting that we had at the Over Center in the community. The first word we got from some key leaders in the community is, don't bring your plans here. Don't bring your ministry goals here. Don't bring your control here. You're welcome to come as a neighbor, as a learner, but we need to turn the whole ownership of this project around. And the best thing that happens is we didn't get that grant. I think it was like millions of dollars if we need, what we need is partnership or friendship. So that's just a faculty perspective from my view.
I'm going to invite all of you to come back up, and we're going to have some time for some Q&A. And I'm glad that Melvin mentioned this. I was supposed to mention this when we made my first remarks. But this partnership really is based off this long-term commitment. And Harley and Melvin, you two are the cornerstones of, part of those cornerstones of this partnership. And I'm very excited for your commitment and your leadership over the years with this partnership. I'm going to step aside, let the two of you step over and use this mic, and then we'll let the three of you use this mic. Well, what are some questions that people have that you'd like to ask?
So let me ask the obvious question, which is, we have a number of faculty and staff and students here. If anyone wants to get involved, what does that look like? What does that process look like? What kind of advice would you offer in terms of thinking about being engaged in this community? How would you get that ball rolling?
Well, I think that there's a multitude of opportunities, whether in service learning, experiences like Jolene and I had this summer, opportunities that open up. But I think too, like the intentional desire to continue to show up to community events that are often offered. There's posters all the time everywhere, emails that are, these guys are really pushing hard. And I think just like the ability of just showing up and even just like going to spend lunch there or kind of this continual showing up. It's beyond just I met my 30 hours for my class and now I'm done and I can check that off my list. But I think just like the continual opportunities that are not only offered but also the ones that are not and the ones that are just from kind of showing up and being present in the community. It's not far. It's 15 minutes. We talk about it like it's a distant land, and it's I think too just there's just a different atmosphere as I drive down Snelling. I feel that shift happen, and I think there's something that kind of locationally we've created these barriers that limit interaction, and that I think it's just a continual showing up. And I've been grateful enough that I keep being welcomed back, and that I get to keep bothering these guys. They're coming to my classes, and there's just a continual relationship. You just got to be open to it, I think. So.
Yeah, I think what's really essential is being present, but actually in terms of getting, finding out how to be present, Tanden is really a key person to talk with. Tanden's a coordinator. You have an official title, but I just like to call him coordinator or boss of the Bethel or Frogtown. There's something called PAT, which is Partnership Advisory Committee. That meets once a month. So one way to get involved is to contact, first of all, Tanden, because he does a lot of networking in the neighborhood and discovering issues that are important to the neighborhood. For example, I talked with him about a class I have this semester, and he had two agencies that were looking for students to get involved with them. And then Tanden can connect you with people like Melvin and others who can elaborate or connect you or introduce you to people. There are a lot of really exciting things to do in the neighborhood, but again, like I said, if it's my idea that goes down, it usually kind of flops. But if it's an idea that comes out of the neighborhood, it usually is pretty successful. And there's a partnership advisory board, which is once a month in Tanden, being the boss knows the schedule. But that's a really good place to meet people too.
Yeah, this coming Tuesday is our next monthly PAC meeting. Get a free meal. That's down in the neighborhood. Get to meet some community organizations. We talk about the partnership. There's a sign-in sheet over there, or sign-up sheet if you want to put your name and address on. My business card's over there. But come, reach out to me. Here's one example of what's going to happen. After we get down here, we're going to go to the cafeteria, and the four of us are going to sit down and talk about Harley's qualitative research class for this spring semester, and how can that research class intersect with the Urban Farm and Garden Alliance, and how can there be some mutual partnerships. So that's one way that we start these, is just by having conversations and brainstorming together. Yeah.
I guess following up on the good ideas that have worked, are there some examples that you could share with us, like the ideas that have come from the community that you would like to do more of, or that are good examples now, or?
That makes me laugh. Everything is good. Everything is good. I would say, thinking about Harley's research classes, the very first one, I would say the best lesson, it was a community lesson and an institutional lesson. It was about the difference between good intentions and goodwill. And that good intentions, it sounds really good, but it does mean coming with your own agenda. Goodwill is the opposite. It's about having everyone at the table and creating something together. And while I have the mic in my hand, I also want to share something about Tanden, because this makes what the partnership is. Before he was in that position, he was a co-chair of the partnership. It was during a time that was pretty rocky. And Tanden mentioned to me one day that, excuse me for sharing this, he said, I don't know if I can keep doing this, man. Basically, that's what he said.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked at him and just smiled and said, cool, you have that privilege. You have that privilege to walk away. I don't think it took him too long, but the next time I seen him, he just basically said he wasn't walking away, that he was going to stick with it. And he also knew that it wasn't just about him, that he was going to work with others. So in a sense, answering your question, it's about talking, like Harley said, talking to other people in the community. We really do want to invite you to the community. Besides for the partnership meeting, there's a reconciliation meeting that was birthed right here at Bethel. It's the second Thursday of the month, every month, at the Rondo Library. And everyone is invited.
If you sign up on the sign-up sheet, I'll make sure to get those emails out to you to remind you of when and where those meetings are.
Can you pass it around?
Yeah, we can pass it around. Other questions?
Can you tell us about the Storymobile?
Okay.
What did you learn this year?
Yeah, okay, so I also got to spend part of my time at the Storymobile, which is part of the St. Paul Almanac, if you've ever heard of that. But basically, it's a mobile story collecting kind of, I don't know, it collects stories, but kind of revolutionizes the way that we understand history and the way that we collect stories and who's the storyteller. And consistently, our history has been told from the top down. And the Storymobile aims to really revolutionize that and really, again, tap into the community wealth and the community just power that exists that the top-down storytellers have completely left out. And so it's a way of kind of recording oral history, written history, and just community members' stories and to continue to document it in a way that is honoring and reflective of the community. And so the Storymobile would show up at different community events and kind of set up, and we got to walk around with these cool iPads and ask people questions about different things to engage in kind of even just a conversation, but then also provide multiple platforms for the collection of those stories in a way to just like honor and celebrate them. Celebrate those stories. So.
We have time for about one more question. Yes.
I'm just curious how, as like community organizers, have you seen this partnership evolve over the past like almost 2 decades?
How has it evolved? Slowly, very slow, but with goodwill and being intentional, which is different from goodwill or good intentions. But it's having folks like Professor Sandy here, having class at the Victoria Garden, or having, I see Brother Dave back there, also being part of the partnership, and one of my co-instructors, Professor Andrew, bringing students to the neighborhood. It's really, how they say, having a face on the institution. And the students definitely have been the face and the heart for Bethel. Even after 18 years, there are days and moments where being a student of color on campus is not too healthy mentally, very stressful. And what makes it unstressful is things like the CCC. It's things like having good allies. My brother liked to say the definition of an ally, and that's what Bethel is becoming. It is someone who will stand up for you even if you're not in the room. And so often we are in these small conversations and we hear things and we know it doesn't feel good, or is it truthful? And that's when it's time to find the courage to speak. Or sometimes you can't speak, I like to go just to interrupt or to blow some bubbles. But that's part of the evolution. It's just taking our time, and number one, having great staff people in that position to lead it.
We want to thank you for your time today. If you're a faculty member and you want to learn more about some of our partnerships, I have a handout over here that you can grab that has some brief descriptions of those partnerships. Also, please sign up on the sign-up sheet that's floating around, or grab one of my business cards. And we'd love to have more conversations with each of you. So again, thank you for your time this morning.